Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're absolutely tearing down one of the most alluring fantasies in the entire financial world. You know the one, right? The ultimate dream of just kicking back, escaping that brutal 9-to-5 grind, and letting your investments literally pay your monthly bills. I mean, we all want it. We all dream of that early retirement and living a totally stress-free life. But today we're actually going to pop the hood and look closely at the math behind this dream. We're setting the record straight and busting a massive myth that honestly leaves countless investors frustrated and completely financially stalled.
To really guide us through this, let's bring in a hypothetical investor from our source material. Now, this investor comes in with what they proudly like to call their Jingala portfolio. And their goal, honestly, it's extremely relatable. They say, you know what? I want 50,000 rupees a month in passive income so I can just work from Manali. Sounds pretty amazing, right? Sipping hot tea up in the mountains while those dividend checks just magically roll in every single month, totally replacing a regular salary. It's kind of the ultimate vision of financial freedom that so many of us share.
But this brings us to a really hard, unavoidable mathematical question that we just absolutely have to ask. Is earning 50,000 rupees a month actually possible purely by chasing high dividend stocks? Like, is this a solid, repeatable strategy, or is it just a complete mirage? Well, it's time to hit pause on that mountain living daydream and really scrutinize the actual reality behind this wildly popular approach.
Okay, let's dive right into this. How did our hypothetical investor actually go about building this famous Jingala portfolio? Well, they used a super standard stock screener. They specifically looked for companies with a dividend yield greater than 3% and a massive market capitalization of over 10,000 crores. And you know, on the surface, this feels incredibly logical. You filter for these big, established, seemingly safe companies that have a solid history of paying out cash directly to their shareholders. You hit run on the screener, get your list of stocks, buy them, and just wait for the cash. Honestly, what could possibly go wrong?
Well, let's jump right into reality check number 1, the wealth killers.
Because here's the thing, there are hidden forces actively eating away at this so-called passive income. That 3 or 4% yield you might be targeting? Yeah, that is absolutely not what actually ends up in your pocket. The very first wealth killer is just staring us right in the face, and it's inflation. Let's say you do manage to secure a pretty decent 4% dividend yield. Well, meanwhile, a totally conservative estimate for inflation is running at about 6%. If you're planning to live your entire life off these dividends, you've got a massive structural problem here. With a 4% yield and 6% inflation, your real return is actually negative 2%. The value of that 50,000 rupees is actively shrinking every single year. You are literally losing purchasing power, which means this is simply not a viable 10 or 20-year survival plan.
And man, if you thought inflation was bad, this brilliantly illustrates the tax trap, because inflation isn't the only wealth killer out there. The government definitely wants its cut too. Let's walk through the math of earning 6 lakhs a year in dividends, which remember is that $50,000 a month goal. If you happen to be in the 30% income tax bracket, your tax liability, right off the bat, is about 1.87 lakhs, and that's including cesses. But wait, it actually gets worse. Before the company even pays you a dime, they deducted 10% TDS, tax deducted at source, right up front. Boom. That's 60,000 rupees gone before it even hits your bank account. And because your tax liability is so high, you are now forced to pay quarterly advance tax, or you're going to face strict penalties. It is just a relentless cascade of taxation.
So, the really crucial point here is the striking number 2.8%. For someone in that 30% tax bracket, a seemingly robust 4% dividend yield gets slashed all the way down to an actual post-tax return of just 2.8%. And remember, inflation is sitting at 6%. Your post-tax dividend isn't even covering half the cost of rising prices. Mathematically speaking, it's barely a return at all.
Which brings us right into reality check number 2. The dividend stagnation trap.
Shifting our focus to the actual underlying value of these companies, let's look at the undeniable pattern hidden right inside these high dividend stock lists. Looking at historical data straight from the source, check this out. Stock A, priced at 500 back in 2009, today it's 580, essentially flat. Stock B, 200 rupees in 2009, today it's 235, again, totally flat. And stock C, priced at 400 rupees in 2011, and today, literally more than a decade later, it is at exactly 400.65. Zero growth. Sure, they offer high dividend yields, but the actual value of your investment has just completely stagnated for over 10 years.
So why exactly does this happen?
Well, it's because of something called the dividend trap. You see, when a fundamentally strong, growing company makes a profit, it usually reinvests that money back into itself. It puts it into research and development, it hires better employees, it experiments, and it expands the business. And when the company grows, the stock price grows. But high dividend companies, they're kind of doing the exact opposite. They're taking those profits and just handing them right back to the shareholders. Because they aren't reinvesting in their own growth, their capital just remains entirely flat.
To really feel the pain of this, let's talk about the massive opportunity cost here. If you had bought a stagnant, high-dividend stock back in 2009 for around 1,000 rupees, your capital is basically flatlined. But if you had taken that exact same 1,000 rupees and invested it in a fundamental, growth-focused company, the source notes it could be worth over 11,200 rupees today. By chasing this tiny little yearly payout, you completely missed out on the explosive capital appreciation that actually builds real, life-changing wealth.
And now let's shift gears to reality check number 3. The true math of capital. Okay, brace yourselves, because this is perhaps the harshest reality check of them all. We really need to look at the sheer, frankly, terrifying amount of upfront money actually required to make this passive income dream work. 1.5 crores. Just let that massive number sink in for a second. If you want a gross income of 6 lakhs a year, which is your 50,000 a month, and you are relying on a generous 4% dividend yield, the math strictly dictates that you must have a capital corpus of 1.5 crores invested right now. And hey, if the yield is only 1%, you'd need 6 crores.
And here is the brutal contrast. Our hypothetical investor from the source material, the one who desperately wants that 50,000 a month to go live in Manali, they only have a total portfolio value of 5 lakhs. The disparity here is almost absurd. You simply cannot squeeze 1.5 crores worth of performance out of a tiny 5 lakh portfolio just by wishing for higher dividends. The math is absolute. There's no way around it.
So, let's move on to the real solution and see how this builds the power of compounding.
We've pretty thoroughly dismantled the whole dividend myth at this point, so let's officially pivot our narrative and look at the actual math of long-term wealth creation over a 5-year timeline. If you optimize purely for a 3% dividend yield, you get basic simple addition. 3% over 5 years is just a 15% total return. But if you invest in growth and manage to achieve a patient 12% compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, the math literally explodes. 12% compounded over 5 years doesn't just equal 60, it snowballs into a massive 76% return. Compounding just utterly obliterates the basic dividend strategy over time.
And that leads us to a crucial piece of advice directly from the source. Stop optimizing for impatience. The fundamental issue here isn't really the stocks themselves, it's entirely behavioral. Investors get greedy, they like patience, they want cash in their hands today, right now. And because they literally can't wait out a 5 or 10-year growth period, they end up sabotaging their own future wealth. You absolutely must start optimizing for capital appreciation if you actually want to grow your money.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought as you go look at your own portfolios. Are you willing to sacrifice nearly 80% in long-term compounded wealth just for the fleeting thrill of a tiny dividend payout today? True financial freedom, it isn't built on chasing pennies in the short term. It is built on patience, it's built on compounding, and it's built on the massive growth of your underlying capital over time. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and definitely take a good, hard look at what your money is really doing for you.